My goodness, it is a bright and sunny day, one of those rare events here in the heartland as we're, positioned at the bottom of Lake Michigamme, the great waters of Lake Michigan. And it seems like normally we are cloudy and overcast, and so there's this brilliant orb in the sky today, and it's blinding, but in a good way. How are you this morning, Barrett?
Well, I think that maybe we're feeling like Bill Murray did in that movie Groundhog's Day, that last day when he woke up and everything was different. It was new. Um, 'Cause I love that movie and I love that idea that um, we can learn the lessons that we need to, and we can step out of this cycle that sometimes feels to repeat over and over. And I think in our area here in the Midwest, oftentimes that cycle is overcast kind of feeling most days. But here we've got a nice sunny day, so maybe that's a reflection of the awakening that we're undergoing here.
Yes, I think that's a very good analogy. And of course, Groundhog Day is one of those classic movies that I think when they were making the movie, they had a sense of what they were telling the world, but I don't think they fully comprehended how inspired the movie was. And I think that happens a lot of time in Hollywood, that the movie will have layers of profound insight for those who are searching for insights. And often the actors and the writers and the directors are somewhat oblivious to the depth of the story that they're presenting to us. And, that's how the presence of the Holy Spirit works, is that it's like the light. If you're in a dark room, it's going to seep in around the doors or around the window edges or somewhere. The light is always going to creep in. And Hollywood definitely is a great source of that.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And as we start to look at our life and our daily world through these perspectives of love and kindness, it's amazing what we can see in just about any movie. Regardless, as you're saying, Chris, of what the intention was when they made the movie, there is profundity for us to find in everything, if we're willing to open our eyes to that. And I think it kind of fits a bit into this next section that we're going to be talking about in the course. Um, we're just carrying on with chapter 23, and we're going to go into this section 2, which is the laws of chaos. And one of the things that Jesus is doing in this section is he's really spelling out very clearly the insanity that's in our mind. And even to refer back to that movie, you know, Bill Murray is this kind of mean, kind of nasty character, and he's not nice really to anyone, including himself. And he has to go through this process of seeing this and changing his mind. And in this section, what we're doing is we're really seeing some of the unkindness, some of the insanity within our own mind, so that we can let go of that and that we can change our mind too. So we're going to start off. I'll just start off at the very top here. He says the laws of chaos can be brought to light, though never understood. Chaotic laws are hardly meaningful, and therefore out of reason's sphere. Yet they appear to be an obstacle to reason and to truth. Let us then look upon them calmly, that we may look beyond them, understanding what they are, not what they would maintain. So he's really saying here that if we look with kindness and with non-judgment, even on fearfulness, even on judgment, even on pain and suffering within us, that we can undo it and find the peace that's beyond it.
Very true. And as we continue with that same paragraph here, he goes on to say, it is essential it be understood what they are for, because it is their purpose to make meaningless and to attack the truth. Here are the laws that the rule of the world, here are the laws that rule the world you made. and yet they govern nothing and need not be broken, merely looked upon and gone beyond. And that's one of the things that we get trapped in. The nature of the mind is to try to understand things. But what we have done is we have created a set of current conditions that are not really comprehensible, because we have created all this idiocy, this maniacal environment. And so our mind is really at that point of overload, trying to sort through all this stuff and trying to justify or rectify column A with column B. And of course, that can never be done. So that is what has caused this schism within our mind, where the conscious and subconscious have become at conflict, and there is this buried realm within the unconscious that has all the things that we're afraid to look at, or that we avoid looking at consciously. So it really is a thing, especially right now with all of the upheaval going on globally. It really is bringing all this into a very clear focus that you can't fix it from the realm that it was created from, because that chaos, that upheaval, that mindlessness is not going to ever be fixable. It's not going to ever be workable. So what our job is to rise above it, forgive it, step away from it, and to be the light of the world, to be that presence simply by our activities, by our doing, not by proselytizing and shouting from mountaintops, but simply standing in our truth. That's what's going to start to clear the madness.
Yeah. The more that we can see this madness within us, the more that we can behave kindly around all the madness that is without. Now, as we're going through what feels like somewhat a chaotic time here in the beginning of Trump's presidency, I think a lot of times it's tempting to want to try to fix the situation, to try to make it right. And the Course is very clear about this, that he says, do not attempt to change the world, but rather to change your mind about the world. So we're always working on doing the healing on the inner level. And as we do that, what we're able to do is we're able to bring more peace through our perspective, through our way of being, through our interactions with others. And I think as we go right into this next paragraph, it'll talk about this a little bit more. The first chaotic law is that the truth is different for everyone. Like all these principles, this one maintains that each is separate and has a different set of thoughts that set him off from others. So this principle really is at the core of the ego thought system. This idea that I have my reality, you have your reality. They're not the same reality. And on the level of bodies, that's true. One body is going to have different experiences than another body. But what we see if we go deeper is that on the deepest level, we are really all the same. And the way that we are the same is that we all have the ability to choose love. We all have the ability to reject love. And we all have the part of our mind that is either choosing love or against love. And this similarity is really what matters, because on the deepest level, we all want peace. We all want happiness. And the ways that we're living our lives are reflections of what we think will bring us that happiness. And if we're thinking that attacking or judging someone else is going to bring us our happiness, then we'll do that. But what we'll come to see eventually is that never makes us happy. It might temporarily make us feel superior, make us feel righteous, but in the long run, it's not the way that we're going to have a sense of well-being, and that's what we're really wanting. That's what we're really going for.
Very true. It's the old rhetoric about fighting for peace, if we can just suppress everybody else and, maintain that status quo of everybody being separate, we can eventually fight our way to a peaceful resolution. And of course, I think we've got plenty of historical highlights to tell us that that really has never worked in the past, and having that expectation for the future is not being lucid and being able to actually comprehend the journey as it's unfolding in front of us. So this is the first level of the confusion that the ego creates, which is, as you said, Barrett, it's all about separate minds, separate bodies, separate worlds that people are experiencing life in. And we really have to step beyond that. And I know that a lot of times that becomes a struggle when somebody that you care about, or somebody you respect, or somebody you have a bond with comes up with something that in your mind is just batshit crazy, and you have that deep, deep desire to say, oh, here, let me fix that. You're not seeing the world correctly. Let me remove that little mote that is floating around on your eyeball here, so that you get clarity. And really, that's when we really have to go deeply within and acknowledge the fact that we created this mess, and that we can exit this by surrendering it to the Holy Spirit, to the Christ, and allowing that peace of God to be restored to us. So it's a journey of no distance. I mean, we don't make even a tiniest step in the right direction. What we do is we stand still and allow the truth to be unveiled before us. And that is really how the journey works. It's a journey within, and it's a journey back to our own personal connection to God. And that's, of course, the source of all the confusion and all the sorrow and anger.
Yeah. And I think as we keep going on here, Jesus just leads us further into this. He says on the next paragraph, errors of any kind can be corrected because they are untrue. When brought to truth instead of to each other, they merely disappear. No part of nothing can be more resistant to the truth than can another. So what he's saying here is that, within this world, it does seem like there is an order of difficulty, or there is a hierarchy of the things within our life. But what we come to see is that they are all equally healable. They are all equally shiftable or forgivable. That if we are willing to hand over our conceptions of how things are, and say, I'm not perceiving this truly, I need your help with this, Holy Spirit, what we will find in the long run is we will find a sense of peace. And I think when we remember that that's really what we want, it does change our perspective. I remember hearing once the Dalai Lama talking about people, and he said, well, no matter what your religion, or if you don't have a religion, everyone wants to be happy. And I think it's a very simple idea, but it's a unifying idea. And when we can think of it like that, we can see beyond the form that seems to divide us. And we can find that we can step into a deeper sense of knowing that we are all on the same team, and that we do need to work on this all together. That's the way that we find what we're really looking for.
That is very, very true. And as we go down to this fourth paragraph, this is where it gets really juicy. The second law of chaos, dear indeed to every worshiper of sin, is that each one must sin, and therefore deserves attack and death. And it's interesting how we consciously fail to look at the deeper motivations and our tendency to judge others. Because on the surface, as though I just want to fix this, I just want this person to be happy like me. But then if you really start looking at things that cause you to be angry, the things that come up in your life that are frustrating and that involves other people, you begin to get a deeper sense of how that anger goes below the tip of the iceberg. And when you look at the immensity of it, and how much space it occupies beneath the waterline, then it gets pretty weird. And you do have to admit, oh my God, I didn't realize I had that much hatred within myself. And that is the humbling experience that I think to become much more radical in our devotion to living in the light and to living our own truth, rather than living the lie of the ego. Because the ego, it soft pedals things. It says, oh, we're going to do this for your good. But underneath it, after you've stripped it of all of its embellishments, there's a hatchet waiting, there's a guillotine, there's an electric chair that is being prepared for somebody because they have sinned, and sin is punishable by one thing only, and that is death. So, that's a very harsh way of addressing the fact that we fail to identify and recognize the depth of hatred that goes on within each and every one of us. And as long as you're aligning yourself with the ego, even though you might imagine that you're wearing, little soft gloves that are going to gently pat people awake, the truth is you've got a hatchet, and you're going to strip them down to nothing. So, and that, I realize that's kind of a grim truth, but it nonetheless is truth. It does exist there, and that's what we really have to, as a collective, aspire to reject and ultimately transcend.
Yeah, and I think that this section, as well as a few other sections in the course, really underline this idea that we have to look at what is false. And we have to be able to eventually see it with a compassionate and gentle, peaceful perspective. And looking at this idea that, we think that we are a sinner, we think that everyone is a sinner, it's obviously not the truth, but it's revealing. As you were just saying, Chris, to look at how deep our hatred goes. It's not an easy thing. It's not something we generally want to do. And it's part of why there's such resistance to doing the work here. But the good news is that as we look at it and as we hold Jesus's hand as we do so, we find that we are led through it rather than staying stuck in it. We actually are undoing it, and we're relinquishing our grasp on it. And that's why going into these sections of the Course is so helpful, because Jesus spells out very clearly what we're doing. And we often don't want to see it. We want to kind of hide from it and pretend, okay, well, no, I'm a spiritual student, I don't do that. But to really be honest with ourselves and say, yeah, I want what's best for me first, and other people, if they get something, maybe that's okay, but that's not what I care about. And it doesn't sound very nice, but to be able to look at that with kindness and compassion will actually undo that, so that we can come back to that state of perfect purity and perfect joy and perfect love.
That's very much the way it works. And of course, we've got to, go back and do the Groundhog Day thing over and over and over ad nauseum. And I really enjoy Bill Murray, and the other movie that has a parallel kind of theme was when he put together Scrooge, and that's a brilliant movie that does have a lot of the attributes of Groundhog's Day. It's that journey of awakening to the fact that it's not all about the little self. The little self is going to be gone someday anyway. That one scene in Scrooge where he's at his own funeral and they're in a crematorium and he's watching his own body go up in flames. Well, that's most of what you're all about. All these embellishments we have, all of the things that we attach to ourselves through the ego, those are all going to go up in flames at some point. And out of that, like the phoenix, you will rise, this magnificent and eternal being that is beyond judgment, beyond revenge, beyond, all of the pettiness that the ego is so invested in. As the rest of this section goes on, it says, this principle, closely related to the first, is the demand that errors call for punishment and not correction. And that's a real standard theme here. You don't want to just correct somebody and leave them alone and let them go on down the road. You want to punish them. You want to get the revenge. You may project that and say, well, we want to punish them for humanity, for the crimes they did against humanity. But the truth is, it's the ego's desire to get even, to get that revenge, and to bloody the field as immediately as it can. So it says, for the destruction of the one who makes the error places him beyond correction and beyond forgiveness. Wow, that's pretty black and white, isn't it, Barrett?
Yeah, and that's the ego's interpretation upon all of our mistakes, is that they are sins and that there is no forgiveness and that there's no redemption. And what the Holy Spirit and what Jesus is telling us is that, no, you got it wrong. Not only is it something that forgiveness, you are worthy of forgiveness, you are worthy of redemption, but that thing you think you did that was so bad, it never really happened in the first place. So not only are we finding out that we can come back into God's grace and love, because in truth we never actually left it, we're realizing that there was never any cause for upset, any ever cause for judgment. And it really just pulls the plug on the whole ego thought system. So as we look at this, what we see is how attached we are to the ego thought system. Because even as we start to get these ideas, even as we start to see what they're saying, there's still a part of us that's hooked into them. There's still a part of us that doesn't want to shift into joy or into peace or into happiness. And I think it's why one of our characteristics that we want to work on is patience, that we're patient with ourselves, we're patient with our journey, we're patient with our learning these ideas and living from them. Because the kinder that we can be to ourselves, the kinder that we can be to everyone. And that's really what I think is at the heart of the Course's teaching, is kindness and compassion and love. And to be able to live from that place and to see everything that is happening either as an expression of that kindness or someone asking us for kindness. Because from that perspective, all we want to do is be kind. And I think that's not always easy, but it's a good goal to have.
That is very, very true. It's a thing of, falling off the wagon and then climbing back on again, over and over and over. And it's some days you have those days where everything's all clenched up inside you, where that war between the ego and your true self seems like an unending process. It's like every 20 minutes you have to drag yourself back from leaping off the edge. And it can be tough at times. There are definitely periods when we go through this cycle of the ego resisting what we are trying to accomplish. And it's very important that we realize that whatever resistance there appears to be coming from the ego, since the ego is not truly a real thing to begin with, it's our own deeper resistance to fully letting go of the ego. And that can create a very uncomfortable cycle that randomly pops up, I think, pretty much for everyone. We all have our demons that, we have to address over and over and over again. And as you said, patience is the only way to work your way through to arrive at a point where there's more sun than clouds in your life.
Yeah, and I do really want to underline that as we do this work, the emerging into the sun is inevitable. This experience of reconnecting with the truth of who we are and knowing that sense of light and joy, it's not just something that might happen or that could happen. It's actually something that has already occurred, but is not yet in your awareness. So this awakening to the truth of what we are is it's there, it's solid, it's unquestionable. And again, this is why Jesus is sort of leading us through these sort of darkened woods, because he knows that they're in us. He knows that we're struggling with them and that we're not maybe wanting to see them very clearly. So he spells it out in pretty bold terms, and that helps us to see, okay, right, I know I do that, and I know that if I look at it with kindness, that it will start to shift. So this is really a practice, and it's something that we need to keep internalizing so that we can address whatever boogeymen come up in our life. And just to go back to that movie, The Groundhog Day, there's a pretty dark part of that where Bill Murray is just depressed and he's suicidal. And I think what's important is that he gets through that phase. And he comes to see that there is a reason for hope. There is a reason to keep going. There is, there's a purpose behind all this. And if we remember that purpose is kindness and happiness, I think it helps us to get through some of the times that are a little tough.
That's very true. And, kind of finishing it up for today here, we'll maybe look real fast at paragraph 5, because it does have some nice outcome imagery for us here. It says, think what this seems to do to the relationship between the Father and the Son. Now it appears that they can never be one again, for one must always be condemned, and by the other. In other words, the ego's vision, this whole thing that we're dialoguing about, is projected into the idea of God. God is condemning us. Now are they different and enemies? And their relationship is one of opposition, just as the separate aspects of the sun meet only to conflict, but not to join. One becomes weak, the other becomes strong by his defeat. And fear of God and of each other now appears as sensible, made real by what the Son of God has done both to himself and his Creator. So we're being told that there never was a time when God was up there smiting people and judging people and striking people dead. That was all the craziness that our ego has created in its own definition of God. And as we continue further on down, we'll dialogue a little bit more about this and look for the silver lining that is going to appear. So did you have anything else to share with us, Barrett?
No, I think that's a nice way for us to end, and to realize that that love is really our purpose here, and that's why we're doing this work, and that's why um, that's why we're all on the same team. So next time, as you're going through your life, thinking about people who are against you or who are not doing something right, just try to remember that you have the same purpose, and that purpose is to awaken to your truth. And just by remembering that, it often will help you to find a little bit more happiness and peace within you. So I know I'm going to be working on that idea myself.
Absolutely. And since this is Groundhog Day, I normally would be out there looking for the groundhog, but I think last year, I'm not sure, but I think the neighbors trapped him,
Uh-oh.
and they probably ate him. So we're without a groundhog in my region. So
Does that mean
if he does, in fact,
does that mean you have 6 more weeks of winter, or because he's not around, you split the difference and get 3 more weeks?
well, we'll pray for the 3 more weeks. Although sounds like the wolf is at the door. The puppy is going crazy, so I'll say goodbye.
Bye, Chris.